Hi, my name is Charlotte. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't watched before, it's lovely to have you, and I hope you like my collection of drafting tutorials with a vintage inspired focus. Today I'm going slightly off piste. I normally concentrate on women's clothes, but today I really wanted to draft a summer hat, and bucket hats are really popular at the moment. So this tutorial I'm going to show you a basic bucket hat because it's really straightforward and really fast, and you can draft it for yourself or anyone. So let's get started. Now, most drafting tutorials of course start with the blocks, and a block is just a measurement of your body. With a hat I'm going to just use my own measurements to make it, so you can make it for anybody. And of course, if you have an existing hat which fits you really well, you can just use that instead, like this one. But I'm going to just use my own measurement. So first of all, you have to use the circumference. So that's to go around your head to fit you well. Now there is a real balance. You don't want it too tight, because then it's going to just look like it's cutting off your hair, and also it's going to be really uncomfortable when it's hot weather. And you also, with fabrics, you might be doing 2 layers, you don't want it super tight, so you want sort of a 1 centimeter ease, so it slides easily up and down your head, and that will be on your finished hat. That's basically that measurement. That's our first measurement. And on a bucket hat, the crown, so the top of our hat, is the same as the bottom. Of course, you can become more sophisticated. The second measurement you need is how high your hat has to be. So in theory, you can just see this is where I want my rim to sit, and then your hat height, so how high you want it to be, needs to be a minimum of the top of your head. But of course it can be higher as well. You can go really accentuated or just an average. So you can either put a book on top and measure up, or just stand in front of a mirror and measure that head height. So that's our second measurement. And the third one is purely aesthetic, and that is the depth of your rim. And the rim is this. So that's what shades your eyes. So you can make that identical way around or asymmetric. I'm going with identical, and as I said, do it however wide you want it to be. If you have a hat already, you can copy that if you like it. I'm going to average width between 6 to 8 centimeters, which works well. But with these 3 measurements, we're now going to draft a basic bucket hat. Let's draft out my basic hat structure to see how it actually fits. So you can see I've drawn a little hat here, and the measurement I have is the circumference of my hat, which is this measurement, so that's 60 centimeters. And with a bucket hat, it's also the measurement out around the top, so it's a super simple draft. And I've also got, of course, my height, which is 12. And I've also got, finally, the rim, which is completely up to taste. And with a basic bucket hat, the pieces are your top, then your side, which is a rectangle, so you've got a circle for a top, and the sides I always like to use 2, but you can also make it out of 1 piece. But if you make it out of 1 piece, you got it joining up like this, and then of course this measurement is the same as the outside of that circle. And then finally you also got your rim. Again, you can cut it out of 1 piece. I like to cut it out of 2 pieces, and of course you can cut it out of 4 pieces, just to do with how much paper you and fabric you want to use. And the inside of that donut shape is again the same length as your side and your circle at the top. So what we're going to start off is actually drawing that circle, because We're all using the same measurement, and you can use a calculator to do it. I do it online, and you basically want to do something where you form your circumference. You can work out the radius of your circle, and in my case the radius is 9.6 centimeters. And if in doubt, like mine was something like 9.55555, I went up half a mil. Because if you go down, it can become small and then the head won't fit you. So I'm now just gonna mark that radius. So radius is from the center of your circle to the edge, and it's a slightly complicated calculation, which I just do it online because it's easier. I'm going to quickly draw my lines to help me mark exactly how deep my radius is, and I'm going to use a compass. If you haven't got a compass, this is going to be slightly tricky, so try to find one, or if you have somebody who likes doing maths, they will have one, so you can borrow one, because you will only need it a few times. So I've drawn in my vertical line, here's my horizontal line, and this is already marking my back, my front, and my sides. And that is the top of my head. And then to draw in the seam allowance, all we do is we make a circle which is 1 centimeter bigger. And we draw another line. And that is the top. I can't spell, that's the top. And you cut one, and of course that's for my 12, because I want to see how it fits me and before I actually decide on the design. For your final one, of course, for most styles, you would add a lining as well, because it's easier to finish. If you make out of canvas, you can make it single, but then you just have to think about how you neaten up these edges nicely on the inside. So that's my top. Let's add the sides and the rim. So I'm just going to move it aside, so I've got my measurements here. So the walls, so this bit, that's super easy, which I love. And we're just going to draw a rectangle. And in theory, as I said, you can use it out of 1 pattern piece. I like to make it out of 2. Because otherwise you end up with a 60 centimeter long fabric, which is quite, if you're trying to sort of save paper and fabric, then, you know, I like to add a seam, because then you can sort of piece it together, but it's up to you really. But this is going to be my front and my back. And then, as I said, I'm going to add side seams. But if you just want to have one single piece of fabric, then you just have probably a seam at the center back. But of course it doesn't matter, because it is a circle shape, so the front can be anywhere. This is just for helping me mark everything, so I know where it goes onto the circle shape. So that's my sides, and I need to cut 2, and then I cut at my seam allowance everywhere. So you can see this is super fast, and I'm talking, so if you're just drawing that, you can probably work along with me. And make sure don't use a pen, use a pencil, because it's all about precision. And then the last thing I need to do is draw in my rim. Now this, if I draw a whole circle, like a whole donut shape, it's gonna take a lot of paper. So I'm gonna draw it as a half moon shape, or a C shape. And again, add a seam. So I'm first of all gonna just draw the top of it. And you could use this line, because it's a straight line, and you have to do less pattern cutting and less cutting out if you're like me and you're very lazy. but I'm doing a separate line to make it clear what's happening to you. So I'm going to mark the center because it's going to be quite a big line. I might not even have enough space, but we cross that bridge when we come to it. And on this line I'm going to mark the same radius as this again. And of course what you can just do is that you lay it on, and that way you get exactly the same measurement again. And then I'm going to use my I've got a measurement wrong here. Can you see? What has happened here? Which is why you always have to double check. Okay, 9.6. I must have used the wrong one. So this one was wrong. Which is why I do these measurements, because sometimes if you use the compass before, you might have noticed it can wobble. So that's why it's always good to have these measurements, because you will see if you're going wrong. So that's wrong, I can just ignore it. So this is the inside of my C shape or my half donut, and then I just need to mark my rim width, and of course that's completely up to you. And then you just draw another half circle, and I've just marked it on one side, but of course it's safest to mark it again on this side as well. And you can now see I've got a semi shape. And then the last thing I do again is I just add my seam allowance of 1 centimeter to the inside, and also my seam allowance of 1 centimeter to the inside. So I've got the inside seam allowance, which gets attached to the bottom of my sides, and then I've got my outside seam allowance. And I will actually leave it off for now, because with your trowel you're just cutting out a single layer, and if you add the seam allowance it will look too big. So I'm not adding it on yet. It just means I have to add it on later. But again, we're gonna cut 2 out of these, and of course because I'm cutting out 2, I need to also add seam allowance at the top. So if you know you want to make a bucket hat, and this is exactly, if you for example are copying a shape, so you know exactly it's the shape you love, then you add your seam allowance on the outside. If you're not quite sure and you want to trial it, then I would actually make your first trial without the seam allowance on the outside, because otherwise you end up with a rim which is 1 centimeter too big. But these are your 3 pattern pieces. We're going to cut out 2 of the rim, 2 of your side, and 1 of your circles, sorry. And the straight of grain on here, it's a circle, so it's somewhere. On here the straight of grain is like this, and on here again, because there's another circle, there's going to be a bias somewhere, which is why I like to interface mine, but we'll talk about it later. But these are your 3 pattern pieces ready for your trowel. And here we have it, your most basic bucket hat. Super quick to make and really quick to put together. To stitch the actual hat part together, and then insert the crown at the top, and then attach your rim. So it's actually only a few seams. You can see I've made mine out of single fabric just to check how the trowel looks, and that's a really good idea to do, because once you start constructing properly, you don't want to waste the fabric if you don't actually like the actual style, exactly like clothes. So this is the most basic tutorial. I wanted to show it to you first, so you know how the method works, how it's literally just circles and straights. However, I probably would adapt it a bit and change the fit a little bit, and sort of play around with it a little bit to actually get a more vintage inspired shape I love. So I'm going to show you how to do it in the next video, and of course you can use the same techniques to change the fit overall, so things like changing the rim, the angle, the height, all these sort of things. So I'm going to show you that in the next tutorial, and then in the final tutorial of this series, we're going to be 3 tutorials all about bucket hats. I know you're as excited as I am. And in the final tutorial, I'm going to show you how to stitch it all together. So I'm going to talk about how, you know, how to avoid seams showing, how to actually make it, keep its shape, all these sort of things. But this is my tutorial for a basic bucket hat. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do give me a little thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss on how to actually change the style. Bye!